Hello, it's James Johnson, aka Sulphur Blade, and I am here with Nimby Rails. This is, I guess, part 3 of my Nimby Rail coverage. Probably be 1 or 2 more videos after this. I have some goals, some places to get to, and it's coming together. As you can see, we've taken the main rail from Green Bay down to Appleton, and we've continued the main rail down to Oshkosh, and then we've gotten the main rail to Fond du Lac, and we've even continued the main rail to Teresa Station. I thought it was a kind of a neat role play like stop, having a Teresa Station station at Teresa Station. Just it felt right, and I did what I could to get some additional packs getting transferred into that station by making a couple hookups here. These two particular rails are kind of like my first hybrid rail. And what do I mean by hybrid? Well, if we look at the speed overlay, you'll notice that this track is as fast as the main rail track, and that's because this is indeed main rail put in here. But the main rail is mixed up with some tram rail. Tram rail here getting into the city center, tram rail here getting into the city center, and then in the more wide open area I put in main track line. So to take advantage of this additional speed, instead of using a tram, I actually used one of the cheaper trains. Let's see if I can click on this guy and see if it'll show it. Do I click here? Yeah. And so one of these sepia guys, which is the if you go to purchase trains, it's this guy right here that is rated with 280 passengers at a speed of 220k. So while that doesn't fully utilize the 350k that the line is capable of going, it's a heck of a lot faster than the 70k that the city tram is capable of going. So in many ways, they're getting from point A to point B a bit faster than they normally would. It's kind of like it's somewhere in between being a main line and somewhere in between being a tram. It's the only 2 locations I have like this, and to be honest, it hasn't worked out that great. But then again, the catchment areas that we're running to, 381 and 740 between a 503, this isn't big population area. But it did have nice area to lay mainline tracks. There wasn't a whole lot of spots I needed to, do the thing, as Joe Biden would say. Anyway, continuing on down on the main line here. Let's go back to the line overlay. We've reached Slinger, which is this town here, and we've reached out to Hartford on the trams, bringing in through Slinger, and up this way we've reached out to West Bend with the trams, bringing packs back down towards this point here. Fairly happy with it. Seems to be working out pretty nicely. And then the main line has reached as far as the Germantown, Menominee Falls area, and we've got, again, typical tram system going in here, scooping up as much of the catchment as we can, bringing it back to the main line. and it's working fairly well. So we're getting closer to reaching Milwaukee, and that will be nice. Being able to connect Milwaukee to Green Bay should be a nice boost to income. And then, of course, we do eventually want to connect Chicago to Green Bay. This Chicago tram line is actually doing quite well, even if most of the stations seem to be a little on the upset side. It's raking in some nice cash, but that is to be expected, I suppose, of a tram that's in downtown Chicago. I do find it interesting that the catchment area, like for instance, this is the largest catchment area here in Chicago of 8,518. Chicago's the third biggest city inside of the United States. Milwaukee isn't even close to being, Chicago's size. But Milwaukee is sporting catchments that are very comparable in the downtown area. So it's just to give you guys some ideas that there can be some other towns on the map that might be worth investing in. Like, for instance, I have no idea what's in downtown Minneapolis. I'm sure the Twin Cities are profitable, but that's probably a bad example because, everyone knows that most people consider Minneapolis, St. Paul to be a fairly large metropolis. What would be something maybe like an Indianapolis? People don't really think of Indianapolis as being a giant city, but I have a feeling that, you get a tram station, one or two tram stations here in downtown Indianapolis, and you'll probably be very similar in catchment to the type of tram stations you would have in, say, like downtown Chicago. 5,800 and 4,800 is probably very doable here in Indianapolis, having a catchment similar. So definitely utilize a lot of these mid-sized towns. It's certainly worth it. But anyway, that's where I am so far. Getting close to hooking up Milwaukee. I guess I'll go through the lines on maybe weekly basis. Sure. Let's hop down here to the main line. Week of September 6th. Yeah, that's probably the last complete week. So the 13th. Oh no, that would be the last complete week here. Okay, so 13th. Week of 13th. Mainline Fond du Lac in a week has brought in $3,720. So that would be Fond du Lac to Oshkosh. That's this section of the main line right here. Teresa Slinger, which is this section here, is looking at $2,353,000. Slinger Germantown, that's my most recent section, is at $1,224,000. Fond du Lac Teresa, that's this section here, is up at $2,882,000. And these are weekly statistics, so you're looking at each of these lines is bringing in $1 to $2 million approximately, and that's to be expected. Still, $1 to $2 million is nothing to shake a stick at, and this is more rural area. This is smaller catchment area, but I'm still quite happy with those numbers. Then if we go into, say, more mainline, like Appleton to Oshkosh, that stretch here, we jump up to $4 million. So, pretty much 2 times better. And then the big main line, this is the only section of my main line that has two trains on it. and it's actually got several stops. It's the only section of my entire rail empire that is not point-to-point. Is bringing in 5.8, so that, you know, on a per train basis, that's almost 3 million per train. So that's pretty good. So I'm happy with how the main lines are progressing. As far as the smaller lines, now we're looking at smaller gains, like 77,000, 48,000, 500,000, and that's in probably one of the best lines in Milwaukee. Almost 500,000, the other good line in Milwaukee. Then we drop off in Milwaukee back down to 50,000. This is my refund line, the mysterious line that just has refunds for whatever reason. It's still bringing in 78,000. Then there's this orange line in Oshkosh, which is at 200,000. The Horseshoe Pit, which has been the best line in Oshkosh, is at 213,000. Then we're jumping up here to the Appleton area on this purple line, and that's at 239. The Schlitt Park line is at 362. The Washington Park and yellow line here, I think this was another place where I've had refund issues because it's another yellow route, and it's not like I colored them yellow because there was refund issues. It's just the yellow lines happen to both have refund issues, though my refund issues aren't huge. They're rather on the low end. It's not something I'm suffering with by any stretch, but still this line is pulling in 100,000. Then the green line here, the Van Lieshout Park or Little Chute line, is pulling in 157,000. Shady Lane Elementary back down here at the end of the line between Menominee Falls and Germantown is at 63,000. The Riverside line is 63,000. Then this lighter green line here, 79,000. The yellow line, 147,000. And this orangish peach line is at about 138,000. Now moving on to West Bend, which is connecting up in this area of the main line. We're looking at 71,000. The Silver Maple section of that is 123,000. Then the teal section of this is running 192,000. And then where it hooks up to the main line in Slinger is at 134,000. Then going back the other direction on the other side of the interchange, or whatever you want to call it, it's 88,000. And then moving on to this reddish pink line, 90,000. And then into the darker pink magenta line, 76,000. And then getting closer to the end of this particular string of lines, 64,000. And then I think this blue line here is going to be the end, and it's at 47,000. Now we go back to Appleton, which is one of our first lines we created. We're looking at 351,000. Barker's Farm, this is the only tram line where I have two trams working in conjunction with each other. It's pulling in 201,000, so that's about 100,000 per tram. This Mayville line, which is one of those hybrid lines I told you about, is raking in a measly 62,000. Then this is an actual tram, in between a hybrid and the main station, and that's at 22,000. And that's the other hybrid line, which is at 39,000. Evidently, I have a line in here that I didn't actually set up. Oops. This one up here in Fond du Lac at the end of the line is at 127,000. Then this guy here at the other end of the Y in Fond du Lac is at 131,000. Where the Y comes together and links up to the main line in Fond du Lac is at 154,000. This side of the Y is 374,000, and the other side of the Y is 202,000. Then we jump up to back to Appleton again to the Menasha line. We're looking at 142,000. This is going to take us back down to Chicago by the Sears Tower. This is kind of a central line. Well, not central, it's just before the end of the line. It's at 644,000. This is probably the most, no, this is the other end of the line, next to the end of the line, if you will. So that's 559,000. This is the central line in Chicago, which is at 680,000. Now this is going to bring us back up to Green Bay, where it hooks up to the main line. That's 234. Then the Ashwaubenon High School. Excuse me. I am from Wisconsin, honestly. 211,000. Then the FedEx line, the yellow line, which has consistently been one of the better lines in the loop, is 281,000. The De Pere line is 237. This magenta line here is 140,000. Then moving on to the St. Matthews line, it's 114,000. Then hooking up to the Fox Air Seaplanes, we're looking at 140,000. Then up to Whitney Park. This is all Green Bay again, 152,000. And then back over here in Green Bay, we're looking at 251,000. And then hooking up back up to the main line in Green Bay is 287,000. So the Green Bay loop is doing very well. I can't complain with it. Now we're going to pop back down here to the end of the line in Chicago. That's making 383,000. So these end of the lines are doing a little bit less than the central lines do. I guess that's a thing. If you make a straight line, the ends of the straight lines tend to do a little bit worse than the middle sections. And that makes sense because you're going to have far more transfers in the middle sections than at the end of the line. So, but still, 383,000 is good money on a tram, but you know, it isn't Chicago, so. And then on the other side, the Cubs Express that hooks up to Wrigley Field, where this end of the line hooks up to Soldier Field. So you can watch the Bears over here, or you can watch the Cubs over here. And if you're watching the Cubs, you're looking at the lowest earning line in Chicago, at 291,000, which is still really good. And I think that pretty much covers all of the lines I have to date. So yeah, obviously the main lines make significantly more money, even in the rural areas, than the trams do. Almost 2 times more than the best tram. And I think the best tram was, it's either this Milwaukee line here, which is 517, $500,000, or it's the Central Chicago tram, which is this one here, Where would he be? Central Chicago, right here, Dearborn. 680,000. Yeah, so this is the best tram at 680,000, and all the main lines are pushing over $1 million. So there's definitely more money to be had in main lines. However, they're far more costly. Laying down main track is a heck of a lot more expensive than tramline, and the trains that you put on these tracks are a heck of a lot more expensive than trams. So, to each their own. Either way, you're getting a certain amount of ratio of income out of a certain amount of investment put in. But that's where we are in Nimby Rails. We're getting there. Milwaukee's almost hooked up. I'm not sure. I do want to hook up to Chicago, but I have other ideas that I want to push up into central Wisconsin. I would like to hook up Wapaka, Stevens Point, Wausau, Merrill, Marshfield, Medford, up to Phillips, Park Falls. Yes, there's some reasoning because, that's where I hail from. My hometown is amongst that list. Certainly, some of these locations aren't going to have any type of real catchment. Phillips and Park Falls are pretty tiny compared to a lot of the places. Though Wausau, I'm sure, is going to have plenty of catchment. No doubt about it. Stevens Point should have a decent amount of catchment. Wapaka should be okay. Probably not as good as Stevens Point and Wausau, but I think Stevens Point and Wausau will make it worth running a line up this way, for sure. And then continuing on just to get up into this area, that's more RPG purposes than anything. But if I do go up this way, I can simply make a beeline over this way towards Minneapolis. Maybe hook up Minneapolis and Eau Claire to the line. Maybe make a central Wisconsin line coming across Minneapolis, Eau Claire, Abbotsford, Wausau, then drop down, follow the river line down, go to Mosinee, go to Stevens Point, then cut across to Wapaka, hook back up here, and then at Abbotsford, run a line up Highway 13 to Medford, and then all these little cities along Highway 13 going north to Park Falls, and maybe continue all the way on up to Mellon and Ashland and Bayfield. I think that would be interesting. So basically a Highway 13 line to about Abbotsford. Maybe Marshfield? I don't know. Marshfield doesn't seem to make sense because we'd be cutting across here between Eau Claire, Chippewa Falls, and so forth from Wausau to get to Eau Claire to get to Minneapolis. I don't think Marshfield is technically in the cards, though it could be, just to have a secondary line, maybe splitting off from Abbotsford, coming down to Marshfield, going down to Wisconsin Rapids, and then joining back up with the line again, with the original line running this way in Stevens Point. That might make sense. That way you have a secondary way of getting to the place that, yeah, maybe. And maybe from Wausau I might send a line up along 51, the big freeway going into northern Wisconsin, and hook up Merrill, Tomahawk, Rhinelander, maybe going up into the Woodruff Minocqua area or Eagle River. I don't know. But I do want to certainly hook up more of the central rural Wisconsin area to the megapolis, which is southeastern Wisconsin. This area isn't as populated, but it certainly has some towns that are worth hooking up to the line, like Wausau and Stevens Point and Eau Claire, just to name a couple. Madison I could care less about. It's just a bunch of liberal bastards down there. They can go suffer. Find some other rail line to travel on. I don't deal with their types, so we'll avoid Madison at all costs. But yeah, that's what we're looking at going forward. Anyway, I'm James Johnson, aka Sulfur Blade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, please leave a like and subscribe. And until the next time, all, peace.